And we are live. Welcome to another edition of DT Live. First things first, I'm on a new distro. I have no idea how any of this is going to work. So, first thing, edition of DT Live. Oh, first things first, I'm on a new distro. I have no idea how any of... Okay, desktop audio obviously works. How is the mic audio? You guys hanging out in the chat? I'll wait a few seconds. I know there is a slight delay of about 20 seconds, 30 seconds, as far as what you hear on YouTube and you guys being able to respond. Audio is good. All right, thank you. Yeah, we've got John, Alex, Anders, Miguel, Anders, Linux over Windows, Mr. GFY, Michael's in the house. Yeah, we speak CAD. Another John, Whiskey Echo Bravo. All right, great. That's what I needed to hear. I'm using OBS here in Fedora Jam. I had to set up the NVENC encoder for, the NVIDIA hardware encoding. I'm also using the Jack audio server. So, give me just a second, guys. All right, sound still good? Why is Jack special? Good question. Jack, the Jack audio server is used by professionals. Anything professional you want to do with audio is because it's low latency, almost no latency, where Pulse Audio has a lot of latency. That's why you have a lot of like audio and video being out of sync. When you do things like record video in OBS or stream or what have you. Certainly professional musicians can't have any latency latency. I mean, they want zero latency. So that is where something like Jack comes in. So that is why Jack is special. Anyway, this is the Fedora Jam desktop. Now, what is Fedora Jam? So, just briefly, somebody in the chat, by the way, mentioned they had never heard of Fedora Jam. Is this something new? It is not new. I was able to find articles and stuff about Fedora Jam dating back, I don't know, at least 10 or 12 editions of Fedora. But I've been around Linux forever. I had never heard of Fedora Jam until just a couple of days ago. I just stumbled across it. Fedora Jam is for audio enthusiasts and musicians who want to create, edit, and produce audio and music on Linux. It comes with Jack, ALSA, and Pulse Audio by default, including a suite of programs to tailor your studio. So, there you go. So, what makes this special is, of course, it has Jack, and it has, all these multimedia apps. So, this is based, of course, on the latest Fedora 29, but again, I was able to find a bunch of other past editions of Fedora Jam, but apparently nobody uses this thing, nobody knows about this thing. You can't find reviews of Fedora Jam anywhere on the internet for something that's been around, again, many, many years. It is strange how nobody has ever heard of this thing. So, back to the chat. Also, the chat, you guys watching this stream, of course, the chat window is... the colors are not right. This is kind of strange. It's because I could not get the OBS Linux browser plugin installed in OBS here in Fedora and working correctly. Well, I say I could get it working, but I'm using the Flatpak version of OBS, and for some reason, the Flatpak version of OBS has a problem with that particular plugin, the OBS Linux browser plugin. Probably because, Flatpaks are kind of these containerized packages, and I don't know, the OBS Linux browser plugin uses a lot of Chromium libraries and stuff. You actually have to have Chromium installed to use that particular plugin. Back to the chat for a second. Yeah, Fedora, really? Yeah, I've never really been a Fedora fan. I've never been a Fedora user. But you know what? I wanted to give the latest Fedora 29 a try. And then I came across this thing. I was like, you know what? I've been meaning to play around a little bit with Jack. So why not? So, yeah. Bob, I just downloaded Fedora 29 Mate for my ThinkPad T430. Very cool. Michael, DT does know Jack. I don't know anything about Jack. The only thing I was able to do, and this took some time to get everything set up just so I could do this stream. I actually installed this thing like, I want to say 3 days ago. But I've been busy, of course the holidays, then working. But I've spent, an hour or two each day over the last, 2 or 3 days, trying to get everything set up. So it's not like there wasn't some work involved just to get to this point, but really, all I've done is get to the point where Jack works, OBS works, the NVENC encoder works, and that was it. That was all I wanted. And why is this a big deal? Because so many distros, I will tell you why I don't install too many distros on my main production machine and try to do things like these live streams. I have an NVIDIA card. If your distro ships FFmpeg or OBS without NVENC support, I'm not going to use your distro. Now, yes, I could compile FFmpeg myself with NVENC support, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Maybe if I was running something like Gentoo where you're compiling everything from source anyway, yes, that makes sense. But if you're a binary distro, which most distros are, I shouldn't have to compile FFmpeg or compile OBS to get NVENC support. I'm sorry, I just shouldn't. So really like 80-90% of the distros out there already not going to use. I've been wanting to play around with the Jack audio server. Getting Jack to work on any distro really is, requires some effort. You really do have to put in some effort, but on some distros, you have to put in a lot of effort. Too much effort. You guys know I love Arch. I've been running Manjaro on my main production machine here for, a few months now. Getting Jack to work on Manjaro was a challenge. I could get it to work a little bit, but the problem is a lot of like the applications you want to use with Jack, things like Cadence and Claudia and Katia and some of those things, or AUR packages, they tend to break. Whereas distros that are geared toward Jack, specifically geared toward Jack, so things like Ubuntu Studio or AV Linux, or in this case Fedora Jam, are much better for getting started with Jack. So. And Fedora Jam is really the only distro I've come across, really where I get NVENC out of the box. I get FFmpeg and OBS with NVENC support without me having to jump through a lot of hoops. Now, I do have to install like a third-party repo in Fedora because Fedora only ships with free software, just like Debian. So I did have to enable, some non-free repos to get NVENC. But, you install a package or two, and you're up and running. Jack was very easy to get up and running for the most part. I will show you kinda. Okay, so this is the desktop. And in the menu here, you've got a lot of programs here installed by default in Fedora Jam, but the one you want is QJack Control. And I've already got it launched, but it is this little program here. Already got Jack running, but you click the setup button here. And then you set up everything you need to set up as far as the driver. For me, also is working. Is it going to use like a real-time kernel? Yes, in this case. My interface, I'm using my Scarlett Focusrite interface. Sample rate, frames per period. That's pretty much all you need. There's many other options. Some of them I don't really know exactly what they do. Again, I'm very, very new to all of this. But anyway, I got that. Just a few basic settings set up. I click start. The Jack server works. In OBS, for inputs, you choose a Jack input source instead of a Pulse Audio input source. There you go. So it was not actually hard to get Jack running and then importing the Jack audio source into OBS. Actually getting NVENC installed here was a little more of a challenge. Fedora Jam did give me one headache. Fedora Jam did give me is OBS from the repos. I mentioned I installed OBS as a flatpak. OBS from the repos did not want to work for me. It launched. I could import all my profiles and scenes, but when I started to record, it would not record. It would throw up this little pop-up and it would say unspecified error. Well, that doesn't tell me what the problem is, unspecified error. I looked through the OBS error logs, and I really couldn't figure out what was going on. I think it was a FFmpeg error, but I don't know what the error was. I never could get OBS from the Fedora repos, the standard Fedora repos, to work, so I installed the Flatpak. OBS as a Flatpak does work, but the only issue with that is the OBS Linux browser will not install and function in the Flatpak version of OBS. So what I'm doing here is I'm just capturing a Firefox window here for the chat view. All right, back to the chat here, by the way. I'm sorry, I went on a little bit of a rant there. Yeah, can't you just install Jack on any Linux distro? You can, but some of them give you more problems than others. To be honest, to do something like Jack, and you're gonna do serious multimedia production, if you're a musician, for example, I would not do any of this on a rolling release distro. I just wouldn't. You guys know I'm a huge fan of Arch. I think it's my two favorite Linux distros, I tell you guys often, are Debian and Arch. I wouldn't do this kind of thing on Arch. I would do this kind of thing on Debian, not Arch. So that's just me, though. So it's like Ubuntu Studio, says Mr. GFY. Absolutely. It does use KDE Plasma. I couldn't get Fedora working on my ThinkPad, so many issues I gave up. Yes, and I may have issues with this. Again, I've just been playing with this for about 3 days now. I just got to the point where I felt like, you know what, I'm going to click the live stream button and see what happens. This is a test, by the way. So I have no idea, what kind of, I really didn't know if the audio would work or, if anything would work. But you know what? I just wing it, we're not professionals here. I actually expected half of this stuff not to work. And Varun, Fedora is the best distro, best hardware compatibility. Big Daddy Linux. So Rocco is in the chat and he says, "Oh, Derek." Yeah. Do you have to accept the EULA now in Deepin OS? You have to accept the EULA. Well, it depends on what they ship. If they're shipping anything from Microsoft, like the Microsoft fonts, for example, which they may be, you have to accept the Microsoft End User License Agreement. You have to do that if you install those fonts in Ubuntu or whatever distro you use. So that's not unusual. That's actually what you have to do for legal reasons. So yeah, Arch, Ubuntu, Mint work the best. Yeah, all solid distros. Really, pretty much all the big distros. All the distros you guys have heard about. All of them work. They all have their little quirks. Some of them are better suited for certain tasks than others. Yep. Alex, you're on Ubuntu Mate. John, I found Ubuntu 18.10 to be a lot more stable than 18.04. I will tell you, 18.10, and speaking of Rocco at Big Daddy Linux, we reviewed Pop! OS recently over at Big Daddy's podcast, his show every Saturday night. Pop! OS, NVENC, you couldn't get it. Apparently they're shipping a FFmpeg version and an OBS version that are not compiled with NVENC support. And I thought it was a Pop! OS thing. It is not a Pop! OS thing. It is an Ubuntu 18.10 thing. Because Ubuntu does not come with NVENC support, apparently, or at least Ubuntu. I downloaded Ubuntu Studio 18.10 to also try it out. No NVENC. And again, no NVENC, I'm not going to use your distro. Yes, I could compile FFmpeg with NVENC, but that is a pain. It takes a long time. And why should I have to do that on a binary distro? Why wouldn't I just install Gentoo if I wanted to compile things like FFmpeg and OBS? And no, I'm not going to install Gentoo. So. Yeah, gasp. Derek is on KDE. I ran Plasma about a year ago on the channel for a month. I did like a 30-day Plasma challenge, Rob. Red Robbo's workshop. Yep. And Plasma's not that bad. It's not my favorite desktop environment by any means, but I can use it. I would have preferred, though, the Fedora Jam spin here that they're doing. I wish it used something like XFCE if they want a kind of mature desktop environment. Really, I would have preferred them doing something like LXQt, but of course, that's probably a little too extreme. But Plasma's not a bad desktop. I will say, though, Plasma still gives me fits. Single click is enabled by default, and I complain, rock over Big Daddy Linux. Every time we mention something about Plasma, I always talk about what a pain it is to change from double click to single click, because you think it's going to be some kind of way to configure here in the file browser, right? The file manager, but it's not. There's nothing here. And I could go through the system settings and find exactly where to change that, but it's not that big of a deal. And there are a lot of little nagging things about Plasma. I've already had some crashes in Plasma, as far as like little applets and widgets in the panel that occasionally crash. But I had that problem when I ran Plasma a year ago. I was running Manjaro's KDE edition, which was nice. But again, every now and then you get the occasional crash. It wasn't like it was just completely buggy and crashed all the time. But maybe it's not the most stable desktop environment out there. I'm just going to throw that out there. Oh, I didn't know that. I was taken away when I saw the EULA during the install. Yeah. So, Mr. GFY, most Linux distros do not install any non-free software of any kind. So, very few distros ship with the Microsoft core fonts, Arial and Times and Comic Sans. But, being a Chinese distro, Deepin, I guess they don't mind shipping with that kind of stuff, but it is still Microsoft's fonts, and you do have to accept their end user license agreement to use any of Microsoft's stuff. So that's why when you install those fonts, say in Ubuntu, you open up a terminal and you sudo apt install whatever it is, MS core fonts, whatever the package is. In the terminal, a screen will pop up and you actually have to agree to the end user license agreement, even in something like Ubuntu. Can you record podcasts without using Jack, or is it a must go to? No, I mean, I have done every video on my channel, close to 400 now, using Pulse Audio. I think it's good enough to do, podcasting. But again, the pros, for the most part, are going to use Jack. It's easier. It's going to give you less headaches. Pulse Audio, you have to fight with it. Especially musicians, where latency is a real issue, where you want as little latency as possible. Jack is a must in that situation. Pulse Audio is just not going to work. Yeah, I've kept having issues in Mint 19 and keep waiting on Mint 19.1 Tessa for the Ubuntu 18.10 base, but tired of waiting. I need my Linux back. I'm spoiled with recent packages and find it hard to use something like Debian Stable or CentOS. Oh, lost my place here. Sorry, guys. Not keeping up with the chat very well. Yeah, DOS the boss. You moving away from the Windows manager lifestyle? Not necessarily, even if I wanted to use something like Fedora Jam, just because everything is kind of set up. I don't have to use Plasma. I can quickly install something like i3 or Xmonad, log out, log back into the window manager I want to use. I've got config files set up. On my GitLab page, I just pull that down, and I'm good to go. I don't necessarily have to run Plasma. I probably wouldn't long term. I've gotten kind of used to using tiling window managers for a lot of what I do, because it's very easy to place all the windows on the screen exactly where I want them so I can capture them in OBS. It was actually kind of painful for me to open the web browser here. I actually had to size this just right with the mouse, to get this scene right, where in Qtile or Xmonad or i3, I can set rules where a hotkey, a key binding, will just put that on whatever monitor I want at the exact size I want, so I never have to fight with things like that. It's really convenient for what I do. Yes, single click for the win, says Rocco. You know what? Because Plasma, so often these Plasma distros have single click enabled, I've gotten used to where when I do one of these Plasma distros and single click is enabled, it's not that big of a deal as it was, a couple years back. I've kind of gotten used to it. It doesn't, but still. But still, I want double click. Double click should just be default. It should always be default. I think most people expect double click to be there. Yeah, Arch, Solus, Gentoo, Slackware, my favorite distros. All solid. All great distros, yeah. It'll be interesting to see where Solus is going now that Ike has officially announced he's no longer part of the project. Yeah, Mr. GFY, I tried everything to fix my boot EFI for normal Linux distros. Only Deepin worked. I think my hardware is messing up. Sigh. Well, you use what works. If Deepin's working for you, though, Deepin's a fine distro. I mean, it's Debian based, so, you know, it's solid up underneath if you like the Deepin desktop environment. Me personally, I actually think the Deepin desktop environment, the workflow and everything is great. It's a little heavy. You know, if you got older hardware, it might be a little much, but if you got new equipment, I wouldn't worry about it. Oh, and I'm kind of having problems with the chat kind of jumping ahead. Again, I'm not using my normal OBS plugins here, the browser plugin, so this is a little different here. Sorry, guys. Derek, does NVENC reduce CPU use? Yes. Yeah. So the point of using NVENC is so your GPU is doing all the heavy lifting, right? Otherwise, your CPU is going to have to do all that work, and your CPU, even if it's a monster CPU, is just not going to keep up. It is always better to use the GPU, the hardware encoding. The software encoding, again, even if you've got like a monster Threadripper, it's still going to bottleneck, you know, in some cases. And if you got a nice machine, you know, I mean, if you got a nice CPU, chances are you bought a pretty nice video card too. Your video card's always going to perform much better for this kind of stuff. For just recording your desktop, the software encoding, the CPU encoding, it's probably okay. If you're going to do something like what I'm doing right now, live streaming, you better have NVENC enabled. Thanks for the super chat, Mr. GFY. Appreciate that, buddy. Hope you had a great holiday. Yeah, sorry I left Patreon. Here's some bucks to help keep helping the cause. Keep up the great work, man. Thank you, sir. All right. Let's see. Yeah, the window manager is best for me. I'll stick with it for a while. Fedora comes with basic tools already installed. Yep. Unless anyone... Let's see. Okay, I'll try once more with the latest kernel to see if that resolves things. Unless anyone could recommend an Ubuntu-based distro that does Budgie well. You mean other than Ubuntu Budgie? Yeah. I can't think of anything else other than Ubuntu Budgie, unfortunately, as far as an Ubuntu-based Budgie. All right. Yeah, Deepin desktop, it's kind of heavy, but still, all the things fit together. Agreed. You know, appreciate the super chat there, Red Robo. Thank you. All right, I tried Manjaro Deepin once, says Dan Doobie. Yeah, Manjaro does a pretty nice Deepin edition. It's not bad. And just quickly, because I mentioned I was actually going to take a look at everything here in Fedora Jam again. I haven't done too much with it. I spent the last couple of days really just getting Jack working and getting FFmpeg with NVENC installed. I had to enable the RPM United repo, I think is where I found that. And, you know, a third-party Fedora repo. Installed OBS as a Flatpak because OBS from the Fedora repos did not want to play nicely with me. So anyway, I see what is installed by default. Really, I'm just going to go to the heart of the matter here. We want to know about the multimedia apps installed. So under multimedia, we have a capture and import category. Both of these I installed. These were not installed by default. VLC and OBS I installed because OBS I needed and it's not installed by default. VLC I needed because Dragon Player is complete and total garbage. So, and I see we've got some flickering here. You know, I have seen this before, trying to capture Plasma and trying to capture Unity in the past. You guys watching the stream, is some flickering. It's not happening, obviously, on my desktop, but that is weird, the flickering. Yeah. Not sure what's causing that. It could be compositing, maybe, with the Plasma desktop. Anyway, we'll get through this, though. I'm just, again, want to show you guys some of what is installed. So under multimedia, we have a creation category and then a lot of subcategories. Digital processing has a million things that I'll never use because I am not a professional musician. Well, I have music degrees. I'm a professionally trained musician, but I don't do this kind of work these days. But audio effects, a lot of MIDI stuff, jamming, which is the Jack audio mastering, various synthesizers. Under editors, we have Hydrogen, which is a drum machine, very popular program. Audacity, which is just fantastic for an audio editor. We open up Hydrogen. You guys have seen Audacity many times. No, Hydrogen opened up on the wrong monitor. See, this is another thing with a new Linux distro is I've got to go and get all the settings right. I always want new programs to open on the monitor that I'm actually working on. In this case, the Hydrogen opened up very quickly, but I'm waiting for it because it installed on the far left monitor here, and I wasn't expecting that. Anyway, Hydrogen, again, is a drum machine program. Very nice program. Usually installed on these multimedia kind of centric distros. These under creation, we have, of course, a Jack category, and here's where we get a lot of the Jack stuff. Now, one important Jack program that was not installed by default, I installed it from the RPM United repos, I think. I think so. It was a third-party Fedora repo. It's not in the standard Fedora repos again. Cadence. You probably need Cadence installed if you're going to use Jack, because it comes with a couple of tools that are really, really nice to have. Katia, Claudia in particular is very nice. This is where, you can basically make connections here, with the Jack source and the Jack sync. So where you can, if you plug in, multiple input devices, multiple microphones or what have you, these will now appear here, and then you just connect the lines to wherever you want them directed to. So my case, this is pretty simple. I haven't, done much here. The only thing I'm doing is this, this microphone. So I'm not even sure if desktop audio would work. I'm assuming it would. If I wanted to play something on the desktop, you guys would probably hear it on the screen, on the live stream here. And back to applications, multimedia. Got mixers. Let's see what mixers were installed. We got an ALSA configuration, an ALSA HCTL mixer, Rack-A-Rack. I've never heard of that. Firewire audio mixer. I have heard of that one. And again, it opened on a monitor I wasn't expecting. Anyway. See what else we have. Multimedia. See, we have Komoso, which is KDE's webcam program. Nothing special there. We have Juke, which is a music player. Tux Guitar. Dragon Player. I'm going to open up Dragon Player. I want to talk about Dragon Player for a second. I did a couple of test recordings, test videos, not a live stream, just to make sure, it was actually recording video and capturing audio before I went live for this stream. And then I recorded these test MP4 files, like 10, 15 seconds. And I would open Dragon Player. Dragon Player will not play them. I've never liked Dragon Player anyway, so that gave me a good excuse to just install VLC. Dragon Player is complete garbage. I want this off my system. Yes, I feel that strongly about Dragon Player. KDE, your suite of apps is so good. Why do you still put Dragon Player out there? In public. Yes, it is a POS. You are right, Mr. GFY. It is a definite POS. Alright, back to the chat. Let's see if I can catch up here. Yeah, Randomizer says, hi, Derek and folks. How you doing, Randomizer? What's that flickering? Yeah, I've seen that before. I'm not exactly sure what causes that particular flickering. It doesn't happen, obviously, when I'm looking at virtual machines, but when I do installs on physical hardware, I've seen this before in Plasma. I've also seen it before in Unity. So, not exactly sure what is causing that. I'm sure there's probably a fix for it if I wanted to, but again, I was just going to go through that menu just to show you a little bit of what is installed. Yeah, try MX, Pep, or Ubuntu Mate, all solid. And quite frankly, I will tell you guys, I have been very, very, very impressed with MX Linux on real hardware. MX Linux gets so much right. Things just work in MX Linux that do not work on most other Linux distros. So, highly recommend that one. And thanks for the super chat there, Chris. Hello, DT. Glad to get to see a first look at a different Fedora. Yeah, I was going to look at Fedora 29 like the regular Fedora 29, but I already know how it's going to go. I've taken a look at, the last 2 or 3 versions of Fedora. It's always the same. It's this very plain, vanilla GNOME desktop environment. Not a ton of programs installed by default on, your regular edition of Fedora. It's mainly about the GNOME desktop, improvements with Wayland, since they use Wayland by default. I was like, you know what? I want to do something different. Plus, I was looking around for a distro where I could get NVENC out of the box, and that it came with a pretty easy to use Jack server, which there's not that many distros out there with those requirements. Again, getting NVENC to work, especially Debian-based distros, you're usually good. Arch-based distros, you're usually good. But a lot of other stuff out there, not so much. Yeah, Steve's very own. Hello, DT. How you doing, Steve? You guys make sure to check out Steve's content. Steve's very own. He's got a YouTube channel. He's putting out good stuff. Give me just a second here, guys. Add Steve. Steve, you're now a moderator of the channel. Always need more moderators. Just noticed. Red Robbo, be a mod, sir. Just in case any trolls show up. I haven't had a troll show up in one of these in a while, mainly because I don't do that many live streams. And I never really do them at a regular time. But you never know. So, I'd like to have a few of you guys watching out for the trolls. Yeah, Mr. GFY. Hey, DT, Kane OS came out with a new release. Would be cool if you took a look at it. I have never heard of Kane OS. So I will definitely write that down, and yeah, I may take a look at it if it looks like it's something that tickles my fancy. Yeah. I'm channeling my inner Total OS today. Yeah, Bad Wolf. Evening, DT, and everyone. Good evening, Bad Wolf. Sudo kill trolls. Can I be a troll? I guess we're gonna troll greater than /dev/null. Yeah, we'll beat them back under the bridge. Fedora needs to be a little more ready out of the box, though. Yeah. Is that your original distro? I mean, the one you always use? What I'm using today, I just installed. So this is an edition of Fedora called Fedora Jam. I have no idea who puts this thing out. Their website is actually hosted on the fedoraproject.org website. So it's like the official Fedora website. I can't find much about it. I do know it's been around forever. It's been around forever and nobody knows about it. I had never heard of this thing, and I've heard of most like crazy, obscure Linux C distros. And being a Fedora spin, you definitely think I'd have heard about this thing, but no. You won't find any information out there about it. You won't find anybody who's ever like done a review of it. Yeah, thank you, Rocco. Yeah, keep the train rolling. Appreciate that, sir. Want to make sure everybody also in the chat, for those of you that don't know, Rocco, Big Daddy Linux, will be on later this evening. Be sure to check out his live show. What time are you doing now? You're doing 9 p.m. Eastern? 8 p.m. Central. Let's see. Yeah, I'll be back heading home from the gym. I, too, went to the gym today. It'd been about a week since I'd made it to the gym. I went and got me a little bit of a workout in. I felt like I needed it after Thanksgiving. Yeah, so, yeah, I'm not too bad, even though my doc wouldn't agree. Yeah, what do docs know? John, Big Daddy Linux, what time zone? So, yeah, his show is 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. You folks in the UK and Australia, you just have to do a little bit of math to figure that one out. Are you a maintainer of any Linux distro? You asking me, or are you asking Rocco? It's no, I think, for both of us. I do not want to maintain a Linux distro. People have asked me that. Why don't I just create my own like Linux spin of something? No, I don't want to be a support network for anybody. And I know some of you guys, oh, but we won't bug you. You just create an ISO, put it out there. Yeah, but trust me, I'd get a million questions. And, you know, I don't want to be in that role. I just don't have that kind of time. Let's see. Yeah, you want the link to Kane OS? I actually would like that link, Mr. GFY. You are now a moderator, GFY. Post the link. I'll definitely bookmark that and check it out later. Yeah, so Robbo, yeah, you've been following Max Arcade for years and love the vintage audio restorations. Very cool. Very cool. Let's see, DT, could you possibly take another look at Reborn OS? The Cinchi installer has a few changes since the last time I saw it a year ago. Yeah, I could probably do that. The Cinchi installer, I will tell you, I'm not a big fan. Especially in Antrigos, the Cinchi installer. Wow. It is probably, I mean, of like the big distros, I mean, that sucker is in the top 10 on DistroWatch. Not that the top 10 of DistroWatch means anything, but Antrigos, that installer is horrible. Half the times I've tried to install Antrigos, it didn't install correctly. So I'm not sure if that, you know, is completely to blame as far as the Cinchi installer. Maybe more stuff, you know, underneath the installer, lower level stuff, but I don't know. I haven't been impressed with Antrigos at all, ever. So yeah, gaming night anytime soon. I wouldn't mind playing something. I don't know if I'll play anything this evening or not. Maybe. It's been a while. Bad Wolf. DT, you should take a look at Bento. What in the heck is Bento? You guys are throwing some stuff at me tonight that is completely new to me. So I've got Kane OS. Makes sense why Mr. GFY wants me to take a look at Kane OS. It is another forensics distro, so penetration testing and that sort of thing. I know Mr. GFY, he's a big fan of Parrot OS. Maybe you use Kali, any GFY? I'm sure you have. But this is his wheelhouse here. He loves these sorts of distros. For me, not my bag. Have you thought about checking out Haiku or ReactOS? Yes, I have taken a look at Haiku and ReactOS many times, just not on the channel. They've been around forever. ReactOS has been around nearly 20 years. It is still alpha software. If you really want me to take a look at it, though, I probably should, because there is some interest in ReactOS. Haiku is much more interesting of a project, in my opinion. Yeah. I'd probably take a look at Haiku before I take a look at ReactOS. Haiku makes some sense to me. ReactOS doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I'm not exactly sure what role they're trying to fill, especially 20 years later. By the time they get this thing to an actual like 1.0 release, nobody will care because it will already be so obsolete. Yeah, Voyager Linux. Voyager Linux is not bad. I like Voyager. Parrot. I love Parrot, but not a fan of Kali. Okay. DT, have you tried Beaker web browser? No, I've not tried Beaker. I've never heard of Beaker. Again, you guys know some really kind of off the beaten path sort of tools. Beaker. Black Arch is cool. I have tried to install Black Arch a couple of times. And had some problems. But that was a while ago. It wasn't recent. It was like a year ago. I had some issues with that one. Yeah, I think you should run Neptune for a month. Neptune isn't bad. Me personally, would I run Neptune for a month? I don't like, again, I'm not going to live in that desktop environment, so why? It kind of defeats the purpose of somebody like me using it. Why wouldn't I just use Debian, if I'm just going to install whatever window manager? So, and Mr. GFY, here's more peer pressure to take a look at Kane. Yeah, I'll definitely write it down. We may take a look at Kane. Of course, I can't go into detail as far as all these forensic tools. You know that. I can't. Not my game. Yeah, Big Pod. So you're going to go Fedora. I've got it installed, and it works. It's going to stay on this particular drive for a little while. How long it stays, I don't know. I'm not wiping it out, though. Not right now. Usually when I install something on physical hardware, like on my main production machine or either one of my laptops, it usually stays there a few weeks. Rarely do I install something and blow it away right away, unless it just doesn't work at all. Usually they stay on these machines a month. Sometimes, upwards of 3-4 months in some cases before I wipe them out and move on to something else. DT. Have you ever tried CentOS? I like it a lot. It is always just. I have never used CentOS on anything other than a server. So no. As far as living on it, as far as a desktop, no. I don't understand what the point of that would be, to be honest. I'm sure it works, but why wouldn't I just install Fedora or any other RPM distro? If you want something really stable, something that's going to get old and crusty and just be rock solid stable, Debian is probably a better desktop Linux distribution. Again, nothing wrong with CentOS. Fantastic server operating system. It's just as strange when people mention that they're using it as a desktop. Yeah, I thought about Black Arch, but haven't gotten to it yet. Why you chosen Fedora? What's special? Well, again, I need NVENC to work, and I wanted the Jack audio server without me having to jump through too many hoops, and Fedora fits that nicely. Particularly the NVENC part. I have real issues. I have 6 drives in this machine with 6 different Linux distributions. You guys have never seen me do a live stream on any of those distributions other than Manjaro. You know why? Because I cannot get NVENC to work on any of the other Linux distributions I have on those drives. Now, Fedora Jam, it just works. So Arch and Arch-based distros, I mean, that is really one of the reasons why I tout Arch the way I do, why I promote it, is because it just works, and it, things like NVENC, like I can do anything I want to do with an Arch-based distro. For the most part, Debian is similar. Fedora, it's very similar. But not all distros. I've got, on one of my drives, I've got PC Linux OS, and it's a great distro. Can't get NVENC to work on it. Sabian, Sabion's a really nice Gen 2 based distro. Big supporter of Sabion. NVENC. So, what else have I had on here? Ubuntu Studio 1810, no NVENC, which is shocking. It is shocking that Ubuntu Studio 1810 has, an FFmpeg that hadn't been compiled with NVENC support. That blows my mind. Let's see, what's your opinion on MX? MX is fantastic. One of the best Linux distributions out there today. Absolutely. And that's no joke. Arch with OpenBox is still one of my favorites. I agree with that. Love me some Arch and love me some OpenBox. I still don't like the way apt-get handles dependencies. For the software manager, Synaptic is good, but it is still apt-get based. Yeah, Synaptic is just a front end to apt, Basically doing the same thing you do at the command line, except you're just clicking on buttons instead of, typing in terminal commands. But it's doing the exact same thing. Rose says, EB, English Bob, says, PEP is the best distro for games. He might be right. He games all the time. He would be better to speak on that than me. I'm not a gamer. So, yeah, quite a few Windows games only work well in Fedora Jam using Steam and Proton. Oh, Windows only games work well in Fedora Jam using Steam and Proton. Okay, well, I'll have to check that out. I may do some gaming on this. Yeah, Big Pod. NVENC works well on Ubuntu, but if you want really good support, go for Windows. Yeah, but I don't know. Is the 1810 Ubuntu may not have a NVENC as far as FFmpeg or OBS compiled with NVENC support, because Pop! OS 1810, their version based on 1810, Pop! OS didn't have NVENC support, so 1804 LTS did, though. It was good. 1604 previously I actually used for a long time. It was great. What are everyone's favorite package manager? They all work. apt and Debian and Ubuntu. It's great. Pacman and Arch. Great. DNF here in Fedora. Works just fine. Emerge and Gentoo. Zipper and SUSE. They all do mostly the same things. Just different commands, different syntax, but yeah, I've used some Arch-based distros, but I couldn't find the point of installing those instead of vanilla Arch. The point is usually just saving you a little time. Also, it depends on, like, for somebody like me, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to install most of those Arch-based distros, because I'm going to install my own window manager, some minimal window manager with my own configs, and I'm going to configure the thing exactly to my specifications. For me, yeah, mainline Arch makes a lot of sense. For most people, though, they want a desktop environment presented to them, GNOME, KDE, XFCE, set up for them, configured in a nice, sensible sort of way. For those kinds of people, things like Manjaro and Antergos and Swag Arch and Arco and Arch Labs, all those make a lot more sense. Because if you don't want, say, vanilla XFCE, Manjaro does a fantastic XFCE. That's why you would install, Manjaro in that case over mainline Arch. Just for an example. Yeah, I like CentOS for the low resource usage, but I struggle to do anything advanced in a non-Debian-based distro. Yeah. Well, you get used to using something, For many, many years, I kind of stuck to that Debian world, and then I started playing with Arch a few years ago, and, I'm pretty familiar with how things work in Arch. I don't do a lot with RPM distros, oddly enough. So things like Fedora and SUSE, I'm not that comfortable in. But, I have Fedora running now, so we'll see how this goes. Yeah, I have Ubuntu 1810. As far as I remember, it has NVENC. Let me get back to you on that. Need to reboot from my Arch. Okay, that would be interesting. Because Ubuntu Studio 1810 didn't have it. So it would be strange if the main version of Ubuntu had it. but Studio didn't. Yeah, Elementary is more Mac-like. Yeah. OpenBox or XFCE for me. Solid choices, Paul. Solid choices. Oh. Yeah, DT. Delayed response. I don't use Cent for desktop. I'd hate that. It's for work only. Needed. Yeah, okay. So, right. Yeah. Yeah, CentOS is great. As far as a server operating system, yeah. I've played around with a lot of web servers in the past. Many years ago, did some, web design and really been playing around with that stuff since like the late 90s. And a lot of the web servers I played with, Red Hat back in the early days, but shortly after that, mostly CentOS servers for web servers, occasionally Debian servers. DT, what's your favorite distro and why? No real favorite distro. It depends on what I'm doing. There is no like magical distro that just does everything perfectly. If I want something stable, Debian. If I want something rolling release, Arch. I'll give you 2 there. But again, depends on what exactly we're talking about. Am I setting up a server? Some distros would be great for that, some not so much. Are we gaming? Again, use case. There's no best distro out there. There just isn't. Yeah, install Gentoo. Gentoo can be fun too. I see what you did there. Fun too. No. Yeah, perfect answer, DT. Yeah, prophetic thoughts on Voyager going to GNOME. A bit strange. That's my thoughts on that. It's a bit strange, that decision. But Voyager, I don't know. It's kind of a strange distro because that's the one that does. Wasn't they using like the dock, the Cairo dock or whatever, and it seemed like they were doing more with like these external parts, like the dock, than really what they were doing with the desktop environment anyway. I don't know. DT, when's the next Obscure Window Manager series? I was thinking about that a couple of days ago. It's been a while since we did those, and it would be nice to get back into that. I need to go ahead and come up with a few obscure window managers to take a look at. For sure, I'm going to take a look at BSPWM. For sure. A lot of people asked about that one the last time around. DWM, I'll probably take a look at that. So those 2 for sure. Some other ones people have asked me about I might look at. Window Maker, maybe. Had one guy ask me repeatedly about rat poison. I might take a look at rat poison. Maybe. I'm not committed to rat poison though. Yeah. Alright, yeah, Rocco's leaving us. We'll see you. I might check out Rocco over at Big Daddy Linux here once his show starts later. Yeah, DT, which is your least favorite desktop environment? The Lumina desktop environment. The Lumina desktop environments as it ships with True OS, which is a BSD distro. It's not a Linux distro, but Lumina desktop is garbage. It is a hot mess. I would rather live in the command line full time than have to use that desktop environment. That's how bad that desktop environment is. DT, will you be going any more to terminal-based tip videos? Yeah, I'm definitely going to do more stuff like that. Yeah, the luckiest distro I found for games was Pop, but the newer releases have been crap. Temple OS. Yeah, Temple OS, yeah. It's a shame that Temple OS probably will see no development going forward now that the creator has passed. Nice, I love DWM, yeah. I'm looking forward to trying that one out. I'm curious about Awesome as well. I did Awesome Window Manager during the previous Obscure Window Manager series. I actually lived in Awesome Window Manager several years back. I lived in Awesome for a few months. It's a nice tiling window manager. It's a great first tiling window manager. People often ask me, hey, what's a great first tiling window manager? I would avoid, things like Xmonad for sure. i3 is pretty easy to get going. Awesome Window Manager is pretty easy to get up and running and going. Like out of the box, Awesome is usable. Not every tiling window manager is usable out of the box. Many of them you have to put in some serious work, to configure them to make them usable. But Awesome is great. What is currently recommended for system RAM for a Linux desktop? Used for Steam gaming, typical desktop workload, not server or heavy video editing. Well, I mean, if you're going to be doing anything like gaming, you better have at least 4 gigs. I think 8 gigs is pretty standard these days. It's hard to buy like a desktop these days with less than 8 gigs. I have 16 gigs on my machine. That's more than enough to do anything I want to do. And I do stuff that requires a ton of RAM, like virtual machines. You guys see me do a lot of stuff with virtual machines. 16 gigs is enough where I can, give a virtual machine 8 gigs of RAM and still have 8 gigs of RAM for my host machine. Or have multiple virtual machines going, each of them running, with 2 gigs of RAM or 4 gigs of RAM. Yeah, DT, you live in the command line all the time anyways. Not necessarily. What are your thoughts about BSPWM? I had BSPWM Arco Linux installed on one of my laptops. I had it up and running for about 2 months. I liked it. Yeah, TrueOS is becoming a fork of FreeBSD and will not have a desktop by default. That's good, because by default Lumina was horrible. Ever used Ranger? Yes. Used Ranger quite a bit. I think I've done a video or two on Ranger. Pretty sure I have. Let's see. What are your thoughts on Microsoft supporting Linux? Do you expect to try to take over the kernel and start to ask for a paid license? Microsoft can't take over the kernel. It's all licensed under the GPL. If Microsoft, they can't buy something that's under the GPL because that code is out there. It's free. It's free for you to take it and do whatever you want with it. It's free for me to take and do whatever I want with it. We can fork it, rename it, go in a completely different direction if for some reason we don't like the direction Linux is going. People often ask about Microsoft buying the Linux kernel as if they could do that. They can't, but even if they could, it's not for sale. Right? You can't buy something that's GPL. Same thing, what if they bought Ubuntu? Well, they can't buy Ubuntu. They can buy Canonical, but Ubuntu, the distribution, it's out there. You're free to do whatever. You fork it and you just keep on keeping on with it. So, like if Microsoft bought Canonical tomorrow, the community behind Ubuntu, the community that contributes to Ubuntu, would just fork Ubuntu. Like the very next day, it would be forked. It would be renamed, and it would keep going. And it wouldn't miss a beat. So that's the way it works here with free and open source. So, and we've seen this actually play out like this before. OpenOffice, LibreOffice. Just check that out. So, and they never missed a beat. They just forked everything, created LibreOffice, and just kept going. So. Bad Wolf, I still prefer OpenBox and Xmonad. Yeah. DT, what are your thoughts on Mutt and NeoMutt? I installed NeoMutt. I have it installed on my Manjaro that I use all the time. What I normally make these videos on is Manjaro's i3 edition. So I use the Qtile tiling window manager. And I use NeoMutt. I have it installed. It works. It is a pain to configure. It is not that easy of a program to configure, actually, to get up and running with. And the novelty of it is it's nice to be able to check email at a command prompt. But unless you really, really need that ability, just use Thunderbird. I mean, that's the truth. Just use Thunderbird. There's no reason to use NeoMud again, unless you foresee some need to check email at a command prompt. Yeah, Big Pod. Yeah, I guess I was wrong. Yeah, so 1810 doesn't have NVENC. I wouldn't expect it to, because Ubuntu Studio 1810 didn't have it. It would have been very strange had the main edition of Ubuntu had NVENC installed, but Ubuntu Studio didn't, because then that would mean they went out of their way to get rid of that thing. Yeah, I would not use Office even if Microsoft released it. Well, if they released it, if they open sourced it, then maybe. I can understand, if you're one of those principled people that will only use free software, that makes sense. But that said, I'm not one of those people. I mean, I love free and open source software. I promote it. But, I mean, we just got here, me and Big Pod are talking about the NVENC encoder. That's not free and open source. So. And you better believe I'm going to use it. I'm going to use the proprietary NVIDIA drivers. I'm going to use, all that stuff. Yeah, I know you love checking out the default wallpapers. Yep. Matter of fact, we should check that out. I actually had planned on checking that out. Anyway, let's see what we can come up with here. I'm not sure if these are, it's just 4 wallpapers. One of them is just one of the default Plasma wallpapers. And then we have this one here. And that's really interesting. Makes sense for, kind of a audio-centric kind of distribution. It's not a bad wallpaper, kind of plain. Honestly, I kind of like the default one. Yeah, so really not much to choose from as far as wallpapers. As far as themes, in case anybody's going to ask about that, I don't remember it having a whole lot of themes or icon sets installed. Just your basic, like breeze dark, that sort of thing. I'll go to system settings here, and it's going to open up on the wrong monitor. I've got to, I'm going to have to spend some serious time configuring Plasma to work the way I want, assuming I want to stay in Plasma. I probably just install a different window manager. But yeah, so we have breeze and breeze dark. See if I can apply the breeze dark theme. Yeah, I like the breeze dark theme for a dark theme. It's one of the best dark themes out there. I'm going to do a dark theme though. I need a lighter wallpaper. It doesn't make sense to have a dark theme and a dark wallpaper. Here's the default breeze, the light theme. Yeah, I like that one a little better. And the default one they were using was breeze, except I think it had a some bluish hints to it. Oh well, I guess I'm not getting any blue. Anyway, desktop theme, cursor themes. Yeah, really nothing there. So pretty basic as far as, theming. But quite attractive out of the box. I mean, the breeze theme, the default Plasma breeze theme is nice. The wallpaper's okay. The breeze icons are great. I love the breeze icon set. Yeah. Bad Wolf, you use Geary for email? Yeah. I've been meaning to try out Geary. I've never actually tried to use Geary. Alexander. Hi, DT. I missed the beginning of the show. What desktop environment are you using on Fedora? This is Plasma. Matter of fact, let's do the About system. Fedora 29, Plasma 5.13.5, KDE Frameworks 5.52, Qt 5.11, kernel 4.19.3, very recent kernel, and of course 64-bit, and some hardware information. You guys know I run a 6-core AMD FX processor, and again 16 gigs of RAM is what I have here on my main production machine. open up console. Console with a K. Can we pull up htop? No, we can't. Can I sudo dnf install? Well, I could if I can spell right. Install htop. I normally don't like to install things on a live stream because it will make the stream buffer, because it's going to have to sync the repos and then pull down this package. The good thing is htop is a very, very small program. Should just take a second. And you guys can see some of the extra repos. RPM Fusion, United RPM. Those are third-party repos that I needed to get things like NVENC and Cadence, and some of those packages that were not in the standard Fedora repos. Now this is htop. Now this is not like I normally do in a VM. This is what is going on with me having a browser with 5 tabs, OBS running, htop running. I do have a terminal open just in case I need to kill something. I always like to have an extra terminal window open. So I am using a lot of CPU, but I'm streaming. This is normal. RAM. Well, I can't really see what the RAM is. Let me change. Let me switch profiles. Go to a edit this profile. Let's get a new theme here because I can't really see what's going on. There we go. How about green on black? All right. So we're using about 40% of the CPU. This is with NVENC. This is with me using the GPU to do most of the work. So you can see how if you were doing software encoding for live streaming, you would have major, major problems. So this is why you offload all that stuff to the GPU. The GPU can handle it. And it handles it well. RAM, I'm using 4 gigs of RAM right now. That's actually pretty good considering everything I have going on. To only be using 4 gigs of RAM is not bad. Again, I have Firefox open with 5 different tabs, OBS running, htop running, and then just a terminal that's not doing anything also up and running. Of course, I've got some stuff in the sys tray. Got Dropbox because I needed to transfer stuff from my Manjaro installation to this Fedora installation. Of course, we got our software updater tool here also running. Some other stuff we've got, notifications. Got a little bit of stuff going on, but still, only taking up 4 of the 16 gigs of RAM. All right. You want a full-featured email client? Geary is not that. Okay. Well, I guess I won't try out Geary then. Yeah. Richard. DT, hi. How you doing, Richard? Good to see you. All good, DT. It's a real-life htop view. Yeah. Because, I often pull up, Plasma, these Plasma distros in a VM, and Plasma's using, depending on the distro, 600 megs to about a gig without it really doing anything, but that's not real world use. This is normal use. This is what I do most days here on my computer. These particular programs running, so. And someone was asking how much RAM they needed, and I suggested 8. Well, you saw I was using 4 just doing all of this. So if I was doing much more than this, 8 would be better. So 8 should be good for most everything, though. DT, did you ever use WMII? That is a tiling window manager, I'm assuming. I have not. Might need to write that one down, though. Check that one out. There's some tearing on the streaming. Did you try GTOP? As far as the streaming, if it buffered any while I was installing htop and syncing the repos, I knew that was going to happen. That's why I usually don't do that kind of stuff when I'm live streaming. Let's see, yeah, present arms. How you doing, sir? 1.1 gigs right now. Yeah. Didn't realize I could until a few months ago. I thought it capped out at 8. Are you talking about increasing your RAM on your ThinkPad? Yeah. No, you can go to 12 gigs. I think my ThinkPad, I can only put 8 in it. DOS the boss, though. 32 gigs for him. Hello, crap man. You look shattered today. No, I'm alright today. I did go to the gym, though. Went to the gym this afternoon. Spent about 2 hours at the gym. Got a good night's sleep, but yeah, probably a little wore out from working out. Did some cardio. Not my favorite. I usually avoid the cardio. Yeah, WMII defaults to stacking. Okay. DT, do you think about Linux when you're at the gym? Negative. I think about trying not to have a heart attack, while I'm on that treadmill. At no point, at any time today while I was at the gym, did I even once think about Linux. And no, I don't dream about Linux either, if that's going to be the next question. Present arms. So what did I miss? You missed Fedora Jam. Fedora Jam, I don't know anything about this distro really, other than it's Fedora 29, geared toward multimedia production. Got a lot of multimedia apps. Of course, it's got the Jack audio server, a lot of neat tools. K3B was installed by default. A lot of mixers were installed by default. Some stuff for multimedia creation. We got a lot of amplifiers, synthesizers, various effects. Again, for music production, a lot of Jack stuff, which I don't know anything about Jack, although I did get Jack up and running. I'm using Jack here in OBS. I am actually using the Jack server, but I'm going to have to do some research to figure out the full power of Jack. Anyway, so that is what we're doing, sir. Fedora 21, or excuse me, Fedora 29, but it's really Fedora Jam. I'll pull back up the website here. And I will actually post a link in the chat for those of you that want to check out this particular page. Again, there's not much to it. I can't find much about Fedora Jam. It's been around forever. Apparently, they've had a lot of releases. I can't find any reviews on any of it. It's like nobody uses this thing. Nobody. So it's kind of strange. Yeah, so plasma is flickering. Yeah, the desktop. It's actually flickering in OBS. Is the problem, and then of course that's being shown on YouTube. So I'm not exactly sure what the flickering is. Probably has something to do with NVIDIA drivers. And the fact that it's plasma. I've always had these problems with plasma. Also, again, I did have these flickering issues when I tried to capture the Unity desktop on physical hardware through OBS. I also had some flickering issues with Unity. But plasma has always given me these little flickering problems. I know people are going to recommend, well, open up NVIDIA settings and switch this on and turn that off, and the whole screen tearing thing, and sometimes you get screen artifacts in plasma. One of my biggest gripes about plasma, it's not necessarily the workflow. I can deal with the workflow, but there are a lot of weird graphical glitches with plasma. Yeah, Ubuntu will do nicely on this old Seagate 5400. Yeah, for some reason i3 uses 600 megabytes of RAM on boot up, but on my laptop it uses 200. Same config. I do have a really beefy system though, just wondering. Well, even if it's the same config, do you have the exact same programs installed, the exact same services running in the background and everything? Yeah, present arms. I'll have to download and overview it. Yeah, you know what? It was pretty interesting. I've actually had a lot of fun with this. Just a quick recap. I installed OBS from the Fedora repos, but it didn't want to work correctly for me. When I hit the start recording button, it wouldn't do anything. It would give me a pop-up and it would say unspecified error, which doesn't tell me anything about the error, right? An unspecified error. Well, what's that? I tried to look at the OBS error logs to see if I could figure out what was going on. The best guess I have is OBS didn't like maybe the version of FFmpeg that's installed. I really don't know. So I installed OBS as a Flatpak, and it works great. NVENC is not available in the Fedora repos, obviously. Only free software is available in the standard Fedora repo. So I enabled the United RPM repo and also, what's the other? The Fusion repo. The third-party repos. I installed NVENC. NVENC works just fine in OBS now. That's about it. I installed GIMP. Obviously, GIMP. It's not a KDE application, but I installed GIMP. I love GIMP. It wasn't installed by default. The only other thing, Cadence, which is a app that people use with Jack a lot. Basically a suite of apps. You open up Cadence and you have these various tools like Claudia here, which I showed earlier, which shows all the Jack connections. That is also not in the standard Fedora repos. I think it was in the United RPM repo. That's why I added that repo. Anyway, I've got the Jack server running. No problem. OBS, I'm doing a live stream with the NVENC encoder. No problem. So that's all I need this distro to do. That's all I need any distro to do. So, and very few of them get that right. Very few distros, especially NVENC, get NVENC right. They ship a version of FFmpeg or a version of OBS or both that are not compiled with NVENC. I can't use your distro if you're going to do that. And that eliminates a lot of distros out there, unfortunately. Also, again, a lot of distros are not easy to set up the Jack audio server. Manjaro, I was on Manjaro. I could get Jack installed on Manjaro, but some of the programs I wanted to use alongside Jack, things like Cadence, I could not get to work properly. Because you're installing them from the AUR. It's like things are broken. You go to launch a program, it just doesn't launch. There's errors. You don't know what the errors are. It's a rolling release distro. It's Arch-based distro. That's probably not what you want to be on anyway to do something like this for, real audio production. You want to be on a stable distro. I'm not sure if Fedora is the greatest one to be on, but it's definitely better than being on something rolling like Arch. Fedora is a static release, but it's very bleeding edge static release. I mean, it has very, very fresh packages. That kernel, 4.19.3, I mean, that thing came out like yesterday. So, okay, not yesterday, but you get my point. It's a very recent kernel. I think Big Pod mentioned on our last free and open chat Sunday, Fedora is very bleeding edge, as in the fact that Fedora sometimes will actually make you bleed if you use it. I haven't actually bled out from anywhere using Fedora, so it hasn't been that bad. So yeah, present arms. I think I fixed NVENC. Oh. Well, I will definitely check it out if you fix it. I still have your OpenBox PC Linux OS on one of my drives. Still great. Still works great. Just can't do OBS in it. So can't do a live stream with it. So on 4.19.4. Wow. So you're even ahead of the game. You're a little further along than Fedora. Yeah, you made a new one. Cool. Yeah, Present Arms made me a nice version of PC Linux OS with OpenBox. Of course, you guys know Present Arms. He creates his own distro using the Trinity desktop environment called My PC Linux OS, I think is the website. Yeah, install is near complete. I missed it, Mark. What are you installing? DT, you should ask Scrapjaw which Linux distro he uses for Jack. It's not a bad idea. I might contact Scrapjaw anyway. If I have some issues with Jack, he would definitely be a good one to ask about all that. He is a master at all that. Of course, he is a musician. I mean, that's. Let's see. Yeah, Fedora made me bleed badly. No lie. Was it that bad, Ben? Anything non-Gentoo makes me bleed hard. So Gentoo doesn't make you bleed, but Fedora makes you bleed. You know you're not a normal person, Ben. You should go get checked out. Did Linux from scratch make you bleed, though? I bet it did. Yeah, I think Matt Hartley is good with audio stuff. Yeah, I've checked out a lot of Matt Hartley's videos on YouTube, and you're right. Yeah, his videos have great audio. But you're right. I think he does use the Jack server. I think he's mentioned that before on some of his videos that I've watched. Yeah. All done and rebooting. Yeah, Xubuntu. That's right. You're doing Xubuntu 1810. Cool. Oh, and I've already got a download link for. I'm assuming this is going to be the open box. Very cool. I'm not actually going to download it now, at least not on this drive where I'm on Fedora. When I boot back into my Manjaro drive, I'll pull that down. But thanks, Allie. Can't wait to take a look at that. Yeah, NVENC and DaVinci Resolve are only reason I use Windows for recording and video editing. Yeah. Yeah, Ben likes a challenge. Yep. Okay. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kill the stream. We've been at this for a little while now. Anyway, this was mainly, again, just a test stream. I just wanted to test out. Yeah, again, this distro. I stumbled across this distro. Nobody's ever heard of this thing, Fedora Jam. And it was weird. I start doing research on it, and I can't find anybody that's ever used it, anybody that's ever reviewed it, but I found versions of it dating back to I want to say I found Fedora Jam 22, and we're on Fedora 27, so this thing has been around a long time. I can't find any information about it. The webpage over at fedoraproject.org that mentions Fedora Jam tells me nothing. Anyway, the Jack server works, OBS with NVENC works, so I'm pleasantly surprised about this kind of obscure Linux distro, an obscure Linux distro based on Fedora. So, yeah, I'm going to wrap this up. Let's catch the last couple of comments here in the chat. Yeah, pretty sure Resolve is on Linux too. It is, but it's only supported on Red Hat and CentOS. Yeah, Steve, take care, Derek. Thanks, Steve. Good to see you, buddy. Ben, yes, horribly. I could not work Fedora. It frustrated me to bleeding. Well, apparently I've got my work cut out for me on Fedora. if Ben's telling the truth here, he's not making me look forward to what I'm in store for here. Yeah, stay safe, DT, and cheers. Appreciate the stream. Thanks, John. Yeah, kicked out the Fedora jams. Yeah, I tested Resolve on many Linux distros, but I can only really use it in Windows. Yeah, bye, DT, and everyone. Thanks for the stream. Thanks, Rose. Good to see you. Yep, gotta go. Later, Derek, everyone. Much love. Thanks for the stream. All right, yeah, I'll watch the stream again. Yep. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me for, I don't know, we've been here an hour and a half. Anyway, the folks that are still hanging out here, Anders, Anthem, Bad Wolf, Ben, Big Pod, Doss, Dan, George, John, Mark, Mark Yates, Mr. GFY, Parasite, Patrick, Present Arms, Rose, Saul, Steve's very own, The Unknown, Thrash Bag. Appreciate you guys. Before I go, of course, I do need to give a quick shout out. This show was made possible by Ansem, Carlos, Chris, David, Leo, Rob, Tony, the producers of the show. They are my highest tiered patrons. Also brought to you by all those fine ladies and gentlemen, all those names. Not going to read them all out like I did on the Thanksgiving special. I ran out of breath on that. But I want to sincerely thank each and every one of you guys. They support this channel. None of this would be possible without you guys. If you enjoy this video, please consider supporting the channel. You'll find me at DistroTube over on Patreon. Alright guys, peace.